We are now live. Well, hopefully for a while at least. Kind of depends on. Well, we're doing it early enough where the hurricane isn't going to mess up the.
Oh, I was wondering, what are you talking about?
No, we're live by the way. So if you
Oh,
want to
okay.
share, you can go right ahead and let the world know. Let all your peeps know.
Okay. Boom, boom, boom.
Are you ready?
Yeah, you see
Wow.
that quick? I was quick, right?
Wow. Are you wearing tie dye today?
Look,
Okay.
you know what Bucky's is? You know what Bucky's is, right?
Bucky's?
You don't know what Bucky's is?
I don't think so.
You don't know what Bucky's is right there?
I mean, it looks familiar.
It's a gas station. It's a Texas gas station,
Oh,
but
then
they
no.
have two of them here on 95. They
Oh,
built two of them. It's cheap gas, over 100 pumps, over 100 gas pumps. They
Jesus.
sell every flavor of beef jerky you could think of,
Well, then there you go.
and so good barbecue.
Okay.
It's more than a gas station, man. Well, so when I was getting my surgery,
Is this like a promo right now? What we're doing here?
pretty
Like,
much
are we
it
getting
was
paid for this?
well from my hospital when I was getting my surgery. I'd walk the end of the hall and I could see Bucky's, and I said, "I want Bucky's." So when I couldn't talk and couldn't walk really well, the big thing with the family was Bucky's. So it's become a thing now.
It's so much more than a gas station.
There's a piece of Texas with me while I was getting that surgery, man. It was
Okay.
a big deal. It was a big
Sure.
deal.
Yeah. All
So
right.
my kids have, we've all grabbed onto it. I got a Bucky's Halloween shirt now too. Dana got everybody
Okay.
match. I'm not a matching kind of guy, but I got it.
Well, okay. Well, on that note, I'm gonna go ahead and roll the intro.
Yeah, roll it.
Shut up and sit down.
Boom.
Boom.
And for those of you who live anywhere near us locally, that might be a sound that you hear soon with Transformers popping. Um, hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Dope and Dharma. This is the Dharma Time edition. We haven't had this in a while
Yep.
because our celebrity over here has been, traveling the world on his speaking tour. And of course, I'm talking about the one and only the Dope Doctor. And
What's up?
I am of course am still the Dharma guy. Last I checked. So this is Dope and Dharma Time. We're talking about victimhood today. Before I get into all that, let me first say thank you for everybody who's watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. It does help. You can check us out live on our shows on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch under Dope and Dharma. And then, of course, as always, you can listen at your leisure on whatever major podcasting platform you prefer. I think a lot of people off of iTunes really like us, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Anyways, so today is Tuesday. We are in Florida. We have a hurricane bearing down upon us. And actually, did you see the 11 o'clock update?
No. What's it?
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
right
yeah.
through it. Right through here.
Yeah, it's taking a Charlie turn. It's well, first of all, it's still a little too early because they don't quite know how things are going to impact it. But as the newer models have come out, it's been taking more of an easterly thing, and so the one I just watched about an hour ago shows that it's going to hit south of Tampa, right around Port Charlotte, and kind of
Okay.
move up at a diagonal thing, and right in the middle of it is Orlando.
Wow.
So, good times.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I'm still not worried.
So I need to get my propane up and my gas up.
I don't know if it's going to make it out that far. I mean, you'll get the outer bands. It's a pretty large storm, so you'll
Well,
get the outer bands for sure.
Florida's this big, bro.
Yeah. Um, it's supposed to be a category 4 when it makes landfall. It's supposed to be a
Oh, wow.
3 by the time it gets to us in Orlando. It's supposed to be like a 1 with 85-mile-an-hour sustained winds. I I don't want to sound like that dude, but it doesn't fit my personal parameter of things that I get freaked out about. It's only because of my location. I'm so far inland, and I've been here for over 20 years. I've seen so many different paths of hurricanes. I have my own little based upon what I've seen, and I think living in Florida, you're like a pseudo meteorologist, right? Like we get inundated with so much info that we can start using words and terms that I never thought I'd be using. So I do. I have my own set of parameters that I look
Yeah.
at that worry me or don't worry me. And I knock on wood, I've never been wrong thus far. Um, and so this one does not currently fit. It's close. Like it's it checks off a couple boxes, but not enough for me to get worried about. So I'm still good at the moment.
Trinity, I don't know about that, man. I gotta say, if it hits land at 4-3, Florida's small enough where everybody should at least be prepared.
Well,
I've
yeah,
never been in this house with a hurricane.
Sure.
This is my first time in this house with a hurricane.
Well,
And
you're
so in
still not
this,
really in a hurricane though. Like you're gonna get the outer bands. Like you're not in the path.
I think everybody in Florida is an hurricane, bro. It's Florida's
Yeah,
this big,
no.
bro. But the point is that I'm in a tree house, Trinity. I'm in a tree house,
Yeah.
really, right? So it's 4 little levels. So for those of you that don't know, so take a 2-story house, right? 2 stories, and do this, so it becomes 4. It becomes 4 levels, right? And then I have wood. The whole back is wood deck. The whole back is an enormous, cool wood deck thing, and then I got trees all around me.
Yeah. You're going to potentially be in trouble if it goes that way.
And I'm on a par 5. So being on a par 5, there's this hole, so wind can really get a good little, it can get a good run, just like a golf ball can get a good run down the par 5. Wind can knock me for. So I don't know. We lose power with just a regular thunderstorm. So I need to go get my gas up. I need to get my propane up. I'm not afraid for my life, but I am afraid to not have the nicer things in life for a few days.
Yeah, I mean, I have the essentials. I have solar, so I'm not really worried about power going out.
Yeah, your panels are gonna fly off.
Yeah, I have a gas oven, so I can still cook if it does go out. Like I'm good. I'm not really too worried about it. It's just gonna. Plus, where I'm located in my cul-de-sac, I'm literally like the perfect spot because usually when the hurricanes come, the wind is like in front of my house from left to right.
Yeah.
And so on my left side of my house, there's none of my houses and stuff to block it all. Now, if my house was like, there's a guy at the end of my street, I would hate to be him. Literally at the end of my street where everything is going down his corridor, he's right at the end.
Right.
So like his front of his house is completely open. So anyways.
Yeah, I'm screwed, bro. I listen. I'm way too close to the coast. If it has those flip, you know how the back end does that whipping, and so I've just never been here for a hurricane. I've never been this high up during a hurricane. You know what I mean? I like being lower to the ground in a block home. I'm in a wood home in a tree house. I'm literally in a tree house, Trinity.
Yeah. I'm in a block home, so I'm good.
I'm not.
Anyways, so anyway, for those of you who are watching this live,
I loved you all. I've enjoyed all these years. Thank you very much for the beautiful life.
If you're watching it live and you're anywhere near Florida, I hope you and your family are safe in making whatever preparations you need to make to best get through it. I do believe Georgia and things of that nature are the most likely next spot. So if you're up there and you're listening or watching, then I hope you guys are probably not as used to this as we are. So hopefully you're taking the necessary precautions.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, it is serious. It is serious. I mean, it's if you are in certain areas, you're screwed potentially. So you do take it seriously. Do understand, where you're at, what you need to do, in order to get through it safely, for sure.
And my heart's still in Puerto Rico. Like I talked to my aunt this morning. My dad's side, just so I claim Mexican because my mother's side's all Mexican. I was raised here, around the border, the Mexican border. So I'm more Mexican in my culture. But I am half Puerto Rican from my dad's side, but they all live in Puerto Rico, and they're all right. They got all their power back, I think this morning my uncle got his power back on his farm. So he's able to milk all those cows. Cause that's, it's like losing $20,000 a day when you have to throw away milk.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Or, that's a lot. So for Mexico to lose power, it's a very expensive thing when you own industry.
Yeah.
In a place like that, so their infrastructure still sucks, but they're all good. So thankfully, for those in Puerto Rico, there's so many of you in Puerto Rico that still don't have power, that still don't have water, that are still flooded. I feel for you as well. So we should at least mention that.
And right now,
Cuba, who knows? Dude,
Cuba's getting hammered at the moment, but because of their embargoes and things of that nature, we don't get any like live coverage from there. But I mean, they get hit pretty hard. Especially on the west side of it. But I guess moving on. So once we got all that taken care of, let's get the show going.
All right. What are we talking about again?
Yeah, victimhood. And having said that, we may or may not be on air Friday. Kind of just depends on power and things of that nature. But
Got my kayaks.
well, that's all that matters. So victimhood, man. So full disclosure, we decided to talk about today's topic from last night's Couch Live. Once again, for those of you who don't watch us on the regular, we do another show called The Couch Live on Monday evenings, centered around drug and alcohol related issues, but we also dive into family issues as well. And it's locally here on 1680 AM and then 100.7 FM as well, from 8 to 9 locally. And then, of course, we re-aired on YouTube and whatnot. But anyways, we had a really cool guest on there last night, Wante. He was talking about his life and second chances and kind of just, the things he's been through and overcame them and turned into, by all accounts, a good man. Good man, a good father, a good husband. And I think it led him and I, Dope Doctor and I, to talking about, a lot of us have been dealt different hands throughout life, right? And I think it's interesting to kind of see the dynamic that creates, right?
Yeah.
I think we all know like two people, right? Like one person who has been through the most devastating things that you can possibly imagine, but they're like the nicest, most optimistic people you've ever met, right? Like I think we all know at least one person. It's just like how are they so nice?
Yeah.
And then we also know another person who maybe not to belittle somebody's pain, but they might not have been through things that we would look at and say, oh my gosh, that's horrendous that you've been through it. To them it might very well be, but from the outside looking in, it just looks like a normal life maybe.
Right.
But those people are just angry. They're angry, they're bitter, they blame everybody for their problems. It's always this person, it's that thing, it's my boss, it's my ex, it's my my neighbor, if they do this, it's just always somebody.
Always.
And I think we know those two people, right? Like I think we all have at least one of each of those people in our lives somehow, some way.
Yeah.
I know that I think I was the angry one when I was really young. As I was growing up, I definitely was angry and I blamed the world. I blamed my father. I blamed the neighborhood. I blamed everybody around me. And I was fortunate enough to come across some individuals in my life who kind of showed me that wasn't really the case. And so I think I was corrected from that mentality pretty early. My mom didn't let me be one either.
Right.
So for those of you who know, my mom was a bit of a battle axe. So, but yeah, I definitely was more of that, version, I guess, when I was younger.
Right.
I see it now in my son, who's like 11.
Mhm.
I have some behavioral issues with him at school. He'll act up or something, and I'm talking to him. He's always like, well, my freaking teacher. I'm like, hold up. Like, your teacher didn't do anything to you. First of all, you guys aren't equals, okay? Like, your teacher's the authority in the room, and she has the right to tell you to go sit down and do something. She doesn't have to be respectful to you. I mean, she
Right.
should be, but she doesn't have to be.
Right.
And so, like, or when the two of them, his sister and him fight about something, it's always, well, she did this, she did that. I'm like, oh, it's always somebody else, isn't it, buddy? Like, so I'm trying to break him of that habit,
Right.
but I expect that of like,
Yeah.
8, 9, 10, 11-year-old. I
Normal.
kind of, yeah, that's kind of where they're at.
Yeah.
I don't, however, expect it from adults. Well,
Mhm.
I do, but I don't want to.
I was gonna say you
Yeah.
don't expect it.
Yeah. When I look around, I expect
There's
it.
some that are pretty damn predictable, brother.
Yes. And it shouldn't be that way, right? As adults, we're supposed to have matured and overcome that concept
Mhm.
of the perpetual victim, right? Things are constantly happening to you. And so I think that we need to kind of like discuss that today, right? Like the difference, because there is a difference between victimhood and being a victim,
Yeah.
right? Like we are all victims at one point in our lives to something.
Mhm.
Victim doesn't necessarily imply a horrible crime or something like that. Victim could be anything. Somebody could have flipped you off in traffic. You're technically a victim of that behavior. So victim is something that you are unable to control, something that happens from somebody else that impacts you in some sort of way. Like, so we all have that experience. However, I think where it becomes dangerous and what we see a lot of at the moment is victimhood, that victimhood mentality to where your go-to now is always it's somebody else's fault. This person did this. And while that might be the case, I think what we need to cover today is, at the end of the day, no matter what's happening to you, you are still responsible for your feelings. You're still responsible for your reactions to whatever happens, your responses to those things around you. And so I think that is where we're going to take it today. So, having said all that, do you have any immediate thoughts that you want to put out there?
Yeah. Well, my first thought is that some people do get stuck in a place of embracing that victimhood,
Yeah.
and you can't embrace it. Look, if your mind goes there, it's very normal and natural that your mind may go there, because sometimes you're calling it a reason, or
Yeah.
this is what inspired it, or encouraged me to think a certain way, or led me to think or be a certain way. Okay, but at the end of the day, none of us really care. We care about what you're going to do about it. We
Yeah.
care about how your behavior or your attitude affects us. That's the reality of life. Uh, Everybody out there that says they care for minutes and moments until it affects them. Okay, so we all want to be empathetic. That's also part of being human. We want to be empathetic. We want to believe in you. We want to feel for you. We want to hug you. We want to embrace you. But if you make it too difficult by just focusing on how you're a victim of a certain thing, and fail to put any initiative or responsibility on yourself for what you contributed to that situation, then I no longer want to believe in you. It's like going for the underdog is good, but if the underdog just sits there and quits, I don't want to go for the underdog. Move over then, man. You know what I mean? I want to go for the underdog.
Of
I
course.
find myself naturally always going for the underdog. And you know how I know that's normal and natural? Because no matter what reality show I watch, whoever the America's favorite tends to be, guess what? I was rooting for that same person. We tend to think a
Right.
lot, people. We tend to think alike. Movies, they tend to show us the underdog winning. Why do they do that? Because we like that. You
Yeah.
notice the big, rich, and powerful person never wins on TV. The big, rich, powerful always turns into the bad person because for some reason all of us are anti that in a weird way, which doesn't make any sense because we all want that. But then we're like, if you have it, we hate you. But if they create that same rich and powerful person to be someone that it was an underdog at some point, there is some underdogness in them as well. Maybe it's not financially. Maybe it's not by certain things that you may call privileged. But everybody has a sense of being a victim of a situation. So I like the way you said that, Trinity, because it could be within the household that we don't know about.
Right.
It could be a personal verbal aggression or verbal abuse or physical abuse that we don't know about. It could be sexual trauma that we don't know existed in their life. It could be all kinds of things. There's so many different ways to be a victim, but I think we get stuck on only categorizing like a couple of different ways that people could be a victim,
Yeah.
and whoever's the loudest gets all the attention, rather than no, we are all victims of something.
Yep.
We're just not uniting under a certain banner. So like right now, Ukraine is a victim. I don't
Yeah.
like I'm looking out my window right now. My neighbor has a Ukrainian flag. I'm looking at I don't know if it was purposeful, but Dahlia put a Band-Aid on me on my foot 2 days ago, and it's a Ukrainian colors Band-Aid.
Aw.
Yeah, it's very sweet. Nobody's out there with a Russian flag right now. Does that mean we're anti-Russian? No, we love Russia. Russia's, look, there's a lot of great Russian people. Hopefully you out there know someone that's really cool in Russian. I do. I have some good Russian friends that I really like. But if I would put a Russian flag out right now, very insensitive, very bad timing, right?
Yeah, you think?
Yeah. So there's
I don't
things
know.
like
Give it a
that.
shot and see what happens.
Yeah. So there's things like that where, sometimes people parade behind a banner because of some sort of victim stance. Yeah. Okay. But that doesn't mean the other side is bad all the time. It just means that you're struggling with saying, but we don't love Russia. I love Russians. How about
Yeah.
that? Um, but when you embrace it and you soak in it for too long, it becomes who you are.
Yeah.
And it's like learned helplessness. We
Yep.
have that research and
That's all
studies
you
where,
see.
yeah, with a mice, when they felt like it was impossible to get out the box, you could take the sides off the box and they no longer moved. They stood still. It was learned helplessness. That's a real deal.
Yep.
We've studied that psychologically. We know that happens in people, which is why I think Trinity and I are so anti some of the movement that's happening right now, which is allowing certain groups of individuals who have been victimized in life and in this country, in this world for a while, to don't allow yourselves to get placed in a victim mentality and embrace that too much, though, because if you do, then you can't get out. It's actually a way of paralyzing you. So
Yeah.
you think that people are caring for you, you think that people are on your side, but what's really happening is that you're being paralyzed and you're being stuck, and then you can't move, and then you can't become better, because no matter what your failure is, you'll take it as the failure, like with the big F, rather than a failure as a motivating factor.
Well, and it's contagious. That's the other thing I don't like about it, is
Yeah.
it spreads like a poison.
Yeah, it does.
Because it's easy, right? It's easy to point to the big bad, whatever that might be. As an example, I like what Richard wrote here. He commented once again on Facebook Live.
Mhm.
He said, as a society, we have lost the ability to fail and use failure to learn and grow. Anytime we struggle, we want to blame the quote unquote system or others, because we no longer have the ability to accept our missteps in life.
Right.
Um, yeah, there's a really big one that I saw the other day. And I'm not going to focus in on this specifically for too long, because it's just happenstance.
Okay.
But I do think it bears mentioning, because I see it. Oh God, I see it a ton from people. Um, have you seen the whole? And this goes both ways. Like, for whoever's listening to this, this is the one that I saw. Have you ever seen the postings about how there's like no good men out there, right? Like, are there any good men left? All men are bad, or whatever.
No, those are your friends my friends on Facebook and Instagram are very
Well, I
different
have a
than your
wide
friends.
array. I don't even know half the people on my Facebook, to be honest with you. But
Well, apparently the ones
um,
that you see their feed is very
well, I
different.
see both. But yeah, my whole point though is something that doesn't get talked about a lot
Right.
when it comes to that. Is it's that mentality is a victimhood of, hey, there's nobody good out there and they're hurting me. They don't want to acknowledge that your picker's broken.
Yep.
Like, there are good people. So if you're a guy and you're saying there's no good women out there, or if you're a woman and saying there's no good men out there, you're the problem,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's not them. They're being who they are. Like, you can't expect a table to be a chair. For those of you who know me, who've been in my stuff, you know exactly what I mean by that. And
Mhm.
so that's on you. You have to understand that there are good people out there. And if they're not in your life, then what are you doing to not
Right.
attract them to you?
Right.
You're valuing certain things that maybe are leading you to pick somebody who isn't good for you.
Right.
The idea that you've had a bad situation with somebody doesn't mean now that they're all bad. That's the victimhood mentality. I had no role in this whatsoever. I'm a perfect, wonderful person, and this person just showed up in my life and did things to me.
Right.
No, you sought that person out, something about them you deemed attractive, you welcomed them into your life, and
Right.
it turns out to be exactly who they were.
Yeah.
And you overlooked certain things until it became a problem, and then you stopped overlooking them. And so we have to take some accountability. We have to look
Mhm.
inward and say, look, man, I put myself here. The most amazing phrase I think I've heard in probably in my life, man. Like, I got to be honest, I love this phrase. And I remember the first moment that I heard it, and I've stolen it ever since, and I've used it
Mhm.
like at least once a day. I use it. It was you, myself, and he who will not be named. We were at the Toyota dealership getting my truck, and we were sitting down, and the two of you guys were having a conversation. And he was talking about his introduction to rehab. He was new in the rehab, and he was kind of sitting around, and the guy who, I guess, the owner of the rehab, would walk by him every day and look at him and say, hey, remember, your best thinking got you here.
Mhm.
When I first heard that, my immediate thoughts were like, those are fighting words. That's like, what? Like, I'm ready. But it's true though, right? Like, if you think about it, wherever you're at in your current life is typically not like a standalone thing.
Right.
It's a series of decisions and a series of events that led you to right where you're at.
Right.
And you had a role to play in that. Like, it didn't just happen to you. And the victimhood mentality doesn't allow you to see that. The
Right.
victimhood mentality, the reason why it's so dangerous, is because it's so easy to blame the big bad. It's
Right.
so easy to be like, nope, I'm good. I don't need to work on anything. I'm doing all the right stuff. It's just this big bad just keeps coming and do all these things to me. And if you keep thinking that, then eventually you do get paralysis. You just don't move, because what's the point? Everything
Right.
you do, the big bad is going to get you. So why even try?
Right.
And then the people in your life who are actually genuinely good for you, or opportunities that come that might be great for you, you won't change those behaviors and you won't take advantage of those opportunities, because in your head, the big bad's going to ruin it.
Right.
It's woe is me. And then you just turn into this perpetual, person who's just constantly like, oh, this is bad happened to me. And then you start to find those behaviors in others. That's what I mean by it's infectious. You start to find other people who kind of feel the same way, who relate
Yep.
to that, and you start bringing those people into your life, and then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then it starts to get really out of hand, and then you notice that you're surrounded by a bunch of people who all blame the big bad as well,
Right.
and so you're all just kind of enabling one another to just have this victim mentality that's getting you nowhere, and it's actually hurting you actively. And then the problem with that is, typically what happens is the people in your life that aren't in the victimhood mentality, who could help you,
Right.
you'll notice that they start to distance themselves,
Yeah.
because they don't believe that way and they don't want to be brought down. They might try to help, but if you snap at them or judge them or whatever, then they start to kind of cut ties a little bit, and you'll notice that they just don't hang around anymore. And so, like, the people who could actually help you are distancing themselves. The people who are going to continue to hold you down are getting more prevalent in your life. Next thing you know, you look back 5, 6, 7 years, life has gotten pretty bad.
Right.
And all you want to do is blame everybody else. And that is why we're talking about this, is because it's dangerous. Go ahead.
Yeah, and just everything is a barrier. I mean, there's so many barriers in life, right? There's so many different things that are going to create a barrier for that make it a little bit more difficult for you to advance your position, however you want to advance it. But do you know what Pikes Peak is? If I say Pikes Peak, you know what that is? All right. So I used to live in Colorado Springs for a while when I was exiled from Texas. It's a whole other story.
Yeah.
So I lived in Colorado Springs, and I used to go to Pikes Peak. And Pikes Peak, if you don't know what it is, it's one of the highest peaks. I think it's probably it's the second most highest peak in the United States, I believe, right?
I think so.
Anyway, it's very high in Colorado, right? It's real high right there in Colorado Springs. You can't get to Pikes Peak going straight up. Can't get there. You got to do this. You got to do a lot of this. If you've ever driven up a mountain, I don't care what size the mountain is, it doesn't go straight up. You may buy a ticket for an incline and go straight up, but you're not gonna drive up. And that's life, man. In order to get to a point in your life, in order to fulfill a certain ideology, a certain expectation, or a goal, there's going to be some barriers that get in the way, and you got to navigate those barriers. Well, one of the most difficult barriers to navigate is your own thinking, the way you process your thought. So I by the way, I am bothered that whenever you think, because it's a great life lesson, your best thinking got you here. We've all used it in our groups.
Yeah.
I've used that in group a million times. I hate that individual was the first person you heard it from, and so you always think of him when you think about that lesson.
Yeah.
And I know the people that have seen me in counseling all these years, they're like, wow, he had to hear it from him instead of you, Louis. Yeah. Okay.
Well, he's
anyway,
the first person who I heard.
I get it. But it's crazy. But anyway, it's my ego, Trinity. I'll live with it. I'm okay. I'm not a victim here. But the point is that we constantly try to manipulate situations, and we got all these little, we try to dip and dodge situations, and sometimes it works in our lives. So we tend to get carried on with that and do it again and again and again. And that's the problem with getting away with things. Sometimes is we tend to repeat behaviors that we get away with. But in this case, these are things that we're not getting away with. Like, it's becoming hard to achieve, and yet, like what Trinity was saying, we find others that are also struggling with that same thing, and then you all quit together. And when you quit in a group and when you're in mass, you tend to then really get solidified in your thinking. And it's like when we say, Trinity, you can go to any bar in town and just complain about your wife. Any bar. I don't care what bar. Well, make sure there's some men in it. But probably you can go to an all-female bar and still complain about your wife, and they'll probably all really be down with it. The point is, you can go to any bar in town and just say, oh, my wife this, but if you go into a bar and just go, hey, can we all just hold hands and sing Kumbaya or love each other for the moment or just pray? It's just easier to be negative. It's easier to get people riled up. It's easier to get people talking smack than to get people on the same page. And so these things are infectious, and these things are debilitating. And unfortunately, they're usually rooted in a little bit of truth. And because they're rooted in just enough truth, it it can freeze you, it can paralyze you, and it can get you stuck with, yes, but I need you to say this to me first, or I need you to at least
Yep.
acknowledge it first. No, you don't need us to believe it. You don't need us to acknowledge it. You don't need us to apologize for it. You don't need us to embrace it. You don't need us to agree with you. You need none of that. You have to somehow process mentally through it. However you do that, whether it be your faith, whether it be your philosophy, whether it be some sort of spiritual measure, whatever it is, but you have to process it. This is your battle to fight. This world cannot apologize to you enough to make you feel any better. Trust me. There's no apology out here that anyone can make. There's no amount of money or restitution anybody can pay you for any wrong you've been given. Your biggest wrong is your self wrongs, is how you've implemented it upon yourself. You have paralyzed yourself more than anybody else can. You've hurt yourself more than anybody else can. You have lied to yourself more than anybody else can. You have let yourself down more than anybody else can. Therefore, this world can't fix this problem. But I can assure you, this world can stay exactly as ugly and as bad as you think it to be, and yet you can still be successful in it, and you can still achieve in it. We've seen that time and time again with many individuals. There's many of us that have had things happen to us where, based on your measurement, maybe it's not bad enough, but based on our measurement, it's the worst thing that ever could happen to us. And yet we've achieved, and yet we've done well, yet we're happy, yet we're full of joy. So that can happen. You just have to kind of ask yourself, what is it that I'm refusing to give up? What is it I'm telling myself that just makes me just stay here and I'm just unable to put some things together, so to take some advice or to take some suggestions and then to just do it. The reason the Nike thing worked, that just do it, is because it was everyone could relate to it. There was Nike was brilliant when it came up with it, just do it, because they came up with a 3-word phrase that not one individual in the world couldn't relate to. Just do it, regardless of what you think, what you feel, who to blame. Just do it. And they struck gold with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, that's kind of the difference though between victim and victimhood, right?
Right.
That is the biggest difference. And so, in other words, I'm not trying to trivialize anything that anybody's gone through. Like, many people have gone through some very, very horrendous things in their lives,
Right.
and that sucks, and it leaves like scar tissue, and it gives us an opportunity to either grow or not. Um, and it's sad that that's what it is, but that's what it is, right? Like, we don't have the ability to bubble wrap anybody and make sure that they never experience anything that would victimize them. But the difference between that and victimhood are the people who are able to see that as a momentary blip, as something that has happened, but it doesn't define them. That's not who they are. That they don't have to live their life forever, and introduce themselves to everybody as the victim of whatever it was, right? It doesn't have to be your identity. And I think that's the biggest difference between victimhood and victim. Like, one of the things that we last night when you asked Monte, you asked him about being a father. And I wish we had more time last night to go over, but we
Yeah.
can go over it now because we have the
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
And so if I had $1 for every time I've heard the excuse made either by this person or for this person, not a person in particular, but the proverbial person,
Sure.
what
Sure,
would
Trinity.
you
Sure.
expect, right? Like, they don't know how to be a dad because they didn't have a dad. So what'd you
Right.
expect, right? Bullshit. It's like, no. I had a horrible father. My dad was horrible.
Right.
He hasn't been in my life since I was like, I don't know, 6, except for like one phone call at 13.
Right.
And then the 6 years he was there was violent and horrible. Like, a horrible, horrible dad. Scarred me beyond, anything I ever knew, and affected me in ways that still happen to this day. And yet I don't do any of that to my children. I've never once raised my hands on my kids. Matter of fact, that was a point of contention between my mother and I, because my mother was not necessarily excited about the idea that I wasn't going to spank my kid, because she spanked me when I was a kid. And actually, you're one of the ones when you told me that one day, we're like, yeah, nobody in prison's ever been spanked. It was like, oh yeah, he's kind of right. There's no data to back it up, right? It's more of a personal feeling. Like, that's how I was raised. That's what I'm going to do. But regardless, I don't do any of that stuff to my children ever. Matter of fact, I fought hard to be in their lives to make sure that I guaranteed my place in their life. Um, I go to all the parent teacher conferences. I do all these things, and I didn't have the role model. And so instead, for me, what it was number one, I knew how much it sucked to have either no dad or a crappy dad, and so I could empathize with my children and what that would feel like. So I didn't want them to have those same feelings.
Yeah.
So therefore, I tried to deliver in ways that I didn't have delivered to me.
Right.
And then I agree with Wante as far as the kids teach you kind of how to be a father. They kind of do. If you listen, if you pay attention, they tell you what they need. I mean, it's pretty obvious what they need. Like when they're little babies, they're crying or whatever, they need something. As they get older, they're acting out, they're showing attention, they're showing you that they need something. You just got to pay attention.
Right.
And the other way I did it, it sounds kind of stupid, I guess, but we'll see, the dog agrees. The other way that I think that helped me was well, at an earlier age, excuse me, at an earlier age, I saw a lot of what I thought to be good fathers on TV. Believe it or not, I saw. I can't believe I'm going to say his name. The Huxtables, right? Like, on TV, the dude was a good father. Not so much a good person off the camera, but at least on TV, he was a good, solid father. Even Roseanne, believe it or not, like that family was, they were trashy, but they were a tight knit family. They supported one another. They loved one another. They were there. They had dialogue. They had accountability.
Yeah.
So there's a multitude of shows when I was a kid that I got at least exposure to see of what a father could be. Silver Spoons, Growing Pains, like these are all fathers that I saw the relationship. So I was like, okay, it's possible. And then as I got older, I think this is probably where I was the most fortunate. I was surrounded by men in my life that were good fathers, right? I think back to one of the one of the original ones was his name was Huat Ung. He's a friend of mine from Malaysia.
Oh, I was gonna say I didn't know if you said the name or did you cough?
Huatng. Huat Ung is his name. And he was one of the first people who I was exposed to. I was still in high school.
Yeah.
Here he is as an engineer. He had his own business. He was, had an apartment complex. He was married with kids, and he was such a loving father. And like, I respected this man, his ability to be an earner.
Right.
But like, he balanced his earning with being a father. Like, he told his kids he loved them, he hugged them, he was there.
Yeah.
And then, fast forward a couple years, and one of my really good friends, Terrence, I was there when he had his daughter when she was born. And here's a man that I respected, I looked to as an equal, as a friend. And then when his daughter was around, like, he was so loving. And like, I would go to his house to watch football, and his little daughter was playing with us, and he always made sure that she was a priority. Like, so I had a lot of friends that showed me that you don't have to be like a loser to be a dad, or, you don't have to be a punk or something. Like, you could be a masculine man and still love your children and provide for them. So that's kind of what taught me. And even now to this day, if I look at the friends that I have, they're all good fathers, right? Like, I even have a friend that I can think of right now that is a questionable, a questionable citizen, does some sketchy things. Definitely not a good spouse at all, but he's a damn good father though. He's there for every single one of his kids, to like, no matter what, he's there for them. And so I think that was part of it, right? And so it's easy for me to sit back and say, man, I had a crappy father, so I'm gonna do the same thing to my kids, right? Like, and a lot of people would be like, yeah, they would make up excuses. You'd have a split stance, right? Half the people would say that's no excuse,
Right.
and the other half of the people would say, yeah, I get it. And who do you, if I felt that way, who do you think I'm hanging out with? The people who agree and tell me, yeah. So in my world, I'm going to feel justified with not being there for my kids.
Right.
At the end of the day, who's the only person that gets hurt? The kids. Doesn't matter what my mentality is. I'm still not giving what they need. And so I'm keeping that cycle going. And so for me, I think that's the difference between victim and victimhood, is understanding and acknowledging you were victimized. Yes, it happened. It sucks. It's something that I'm going to have to heal and cope and get closure on. But it doesn't have to be the end of the story.
Yep.
Right? There's another page. And so I'm going to choose to overcome that and be different and show as an example and blah, 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 blah. You've heard it all. There's really something to that. And I think that, when people hear that, especially people who've experienced real trauma, I think the natural go-to reactive response is, yeah, but,
Right.
Yeah, but you don't know my story, but I've been through it worse, or I've had this, right? And
Right.
as Louis pointed out earlier, we're in no position to say how you interact with your pain, right? Like, I've been through things in my life that I would feel are painful and traumatic.
Right.
But I can turn to somebody else and see, like, not to put too much out there, but I look at my mother's life when she was younger. Holy shit. Like, if they wrote down some of that stuff and put it in a Lifetime movie, you still wouldn't believe that that's even possible. And that was her life. So comparatively speaking, I had like a great life.
Right.
But then I could look at somebody else who's had a wonderful, loving, structured household with two parents and everything's been great. And I can look at them and be like, dude, you had the awesome, perfect life. But yet when you speak to them, they're going to find moments in their lives where they
Worse.
didn't feel like they had that.
Yeah.
And so it's all relative and it's all subjective. We're in no position to judge anybody else's pain. So I think that we all have to kind of collectively realize the concept of, yes, it happened, but we can get over it. And if you want to stay in that yeah but mentality, nobody's going to stop you. But I think you'll find life takes on a different perspective when you accept what it is, not what you wanted it to be.
You're a perfect example of when we talk about the father who shows up to all of his kids' games and practices, and people go, "Man, that's awesome. You must have had a great dad." And they go, "Well, actually, no, I didn't have a great dad.
Yeah.
My dad never came to any of my games or any of my practices, which is why I come, because I know how important that is." Or they said, "Yes, I did have a great dad, and my dad came to all my games and came to all my practices, and I know how good that made me feel. So I do the same." So
Right.
the same outcome can be had by either, and you're that person that's able to focus on the outcome rather than all the reasons why it can't happen. And I think we do need to do that. I think we need to do that, Trinity, in a lot of different things in our life, and not just in parenting, but just even just walking around this world of ours. So many of you, you get upset with a certain scenario, and Trinity and I is weird because here's one thing that you and I both use the same kick the dog thing and didn't know each other. So where we got that from, I have no clue because I don't
I don't know
remember when
either.
I got it, but it's a at least a 30-year-old story, right? And it's like weird when I heard you say it, I was like, wow, there's another one, you know. But all of us know that if a dog is getting kicked at home, it didn't start there. It could have started with the person spilling coffee on themselves. And then as they spill coffee, they accidentally go into somebody's lane. And then now that person's mad because you came in their lane and they flicked you off. And then so they race to work. But anyway, so the argument and the negativity goes and bleeds throughout the day. And so at the end of the day, somebody goes home and kicks their dog because negativity continues, right? It's
Yep.
energy. Negative energy will continue to flow. But Trinity and I are big believers that positive energy can flow to it. It might be a little bit harder. There's a lot more in the way of it, and it's not as easy to give it to somebody else. But look, man, when you say good morning to somebody, when you say hello to somebody, when you text just randomly that you're thinking about them or call them, you smile at somebody when you're passing by. You actually listen to somebody when they're talking to you rather than just waiting for your opportunity to speak. If you actually engage in this world just a little bit more, then you're doing your part. Look, you do that enough, and I guarantee you positive stuff is coming at you. I guarantee you. Like when Trinity says your picker's broke, some of you, your picker really is broke. Some of you just fish with the wrong bait, and therefore, you can't get mad that you catch what you catch when you fish a certain way. You got to change the way you fish. But some of you see early signs that this person is just going to hurt you, and yet you stay in that situation. And you don't have to. You really don't have to. I know you tell yourself time and time again, well, we just have history. We've been together for a long time, so you stay in situations longer than you should. Well, history is history. That's exactly what it is. History doesn't. We don't continue history. Look, Roman history is awesome. Look, we all go to Rome. We embrace it. Wow, this is great. But none of us go there and go, God, remember when they used to just come and just grab everybody and make them all slaves? Like none of us talk about Roman slavery. Like you know what I mean? Like if I say slavery today, we all think, United States slavery. Dude, Rome did it bigger and worse than any other country could ever do it, than any other humanity could ever do it. Rome enslaved everyone it conquered. It really did. And you had no rights for 500 years of it. So it was dominant. And so this stuff existed in our lifetime. But you know what? We don't embrace that kind of history because it's way too old. Well, that's what we have to do with our own personal history, except I don't have the luxury of waiting 500 years to get over it. I got to, if I want to move forward, I got to find a way to get through it and over it now.
Yeah.
And that's not callous about it. It's just like, but that's where spirituality comes into play. That's where philosophy comes into play. If you don't have a philosophy that helps you get through hard times, if you don't have a spirituality or a faith that helps you get through tough times, then that's what you're missing. Then that's what you need to work on. That's what you need to find, because someone else does. I promise you, someone else out there does. Trinity, I'll never forget. I was at this meeting, and I was in my early 20s. And I walk in this meeting, and at that time in my life, I didn't know how to relate to people other than aggressive and blah, 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 whatever. So this guy is sharing in a meeting that he has these, and I think it was twin sons that got sexually abused by this dude. Twin sons, little boys, they got sexually abused by this person. And so after the meeting, I go up to the guy, and I thought I was being a good friend. I liked the guy. We had talked a little bit, but this is the first time he actually shared openly about something. I guess the guy got away with it. Like, the case was over, and the guy got away with it, and for some reason there wasn't enough proof, so the guy was set free. So I went up to the guy, and I thought I was being a good friend. I said, "Listen, man, if you want to go take care of that, I'm here with you, man. I'm your boy. Let's go handle it." And I thought I was being a friend. I really did. And he looks at me and goes, "Oh, Louis, that's, I appreciate that, but that's not why I mention it. No, I mention it because I don't want to do that. I want to forgive them. I want to find a way to forgive them. And I'm trying to let that go. And that's why I spoke." Dude, I felt like such a dork, man. I was like, I left her, like, at first in my head, my initial instinct was like, dude, he's an idiot. What are you talking about? Like, I could not get it, Trinity. But the reason here I am 30 years later, 33 years later, really, 31 years later, still remembering that story as vividly as when it happened, is because that guy showed me that he was embracing his faith to get through something that, look, even if he would have acted upon it, what was that going to do? It still happened.
Yeah.
It still happened. So he was looking for a way that he could process through it without it causing more damage to himself and to his family and to his life. How do I it's already damaging. Now I can further damage it by thinking I'm resolving it when all I'm going to do is put myself in prison, right? Or do something that I'm not morally going to be okay with. Or I can use my faith in my programming that I'm working on to get over it. And I was like, whoa, man, I want that. And I remember thinking, I want that. Whatever that is, whatever kind of faith that is, instead of making fun of it or telling them, dude, you're trying to believe in something that doesn't exist. We're just all here for nothing. We're all here to just run havoc, and then we die into nothing. I was like, what good does that do? That just has me behaving poorly. Whereas whatever he believes makes him somebody that I want to be around. That's the kind of neighbor I want.
Well, it re-victimizes the kids.
Yeah, so why not be the kind of neighbor I want rather than believe the way I believe, which just doesn't give me any kind of comfort in any bad situation. It just makes me feel okay with doing harm, self-harm, harm to others, harm, period. I wanted what that guy had that day, man. And so I'll never forget that. So I think that all of us could do that, right? If we find a faith or a philosophy that can help us get through really bad moments, or through bad ways of thinking, we need that more than we need somebody just agreeing with us. I don't need a yes man. Please, if you want to be in my life just because you want to agree with me, I don't need that. I agree with me. I you know what I mean? I already have that. I can look in the mirror. I can agree with me all day long. You ever see that God, I can't say it like this. All right. There was a time I was so arrogant that I thought no matter how I looked great. Right?
Sure.
You ever meet that person who goes, I look great? No, you don't.
Sure.
No, you don't look as great as you think, but that's okay, because you need that confidence is what's sexy. The confidence is what people like, and you know what? Some of us that don't look that great, need to believe that we look great so that we can walk around confident. And I like that. The confidence is what I like, and I think that's what we all like. And just like we all think confidence is sexy, we also think taking responsibility is sexy. If you can walk around taking responsibility for what you do, we are very attracted to that as a friend and as a person in our life.
Well, the other thing that you mentioned earlier, well, first off, I want to say about the whole, vengeance and things of that nature. People have asked me that before, especially once I had kids, and I've always told them, I don't know what I would do in those types of situations, but I've been open and honest and says I hope that I'm able to forgive them. And everybody does look at me like I'm crazy, and it's like, dude, think of it this way, man. If I were to go out and do something vindictive or vengeful to somebody, and let's say I was successful. Great. That person paid. Awesome. But now my child is victimized again because now they don't have their father. I just single-handedly took their father away from them. That it's such a selfish thing to want to be vengeful. It's not really helping my kids by going
Right.
and attacking this person. It's making me and only me feel good. Period. Anyways, no, there's something else you touched on earlier that I kind of want to reiterate too, and it can come off callous, but sorry. Um, so there's a show out now that I think a lot of people are talking about. I've already seen, and it's phenomenal. Very well done, very well acted. Dahmer, which to me is interesting. A lot of younger kids didn't even know about Dahmer. Like for me, it was a huge deal. Like it happened in the '90s, man. Like that's all we talked about when it happened. But for years, the name Dahmer has been synonymous to like crazy and serial killer, right? Like it's a name like Ted Bundy, that you mention when you're trying to make a point of being crazy or hurting
Mm-hmm.
people or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to go all Dahmer on you or something. And this show that's out definitely covers the horrific nature of everything, but it also kind of covers the beginning stages, right? Where it shows in the beginning, like kind of how it all came together. And I don't think that anybody on this planet that I've ever spoken to has not put two and two together and figured out it probably had to suck for him growing up to turn out that way. But unanimously, you know what the one thing that they all agree on? Nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. Nobody cares what he's gone through. The only thing everybody cares about is the people he's hurt and the things he's done to them. Period.
Right.
Nobody's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for him."
Right.
Maybe now because of the show.
Right.
I think the consensus I've seen from many people is like, "Geez, like how could they not found it out sooner?" There's no telling why that happened, and blah blah blah. But in the end, nobody cares.
That's right.
The only thing they care about is the fact that this dude went on and victimized so many other people.
That's right.
Not only the immediate victims, but the families of those victims. Just
Right.
he hurt a lot of people.
Right.
And that's what people care about.
Right.
And so the same thing with us, that phrase hurt people,
Right.
that only makes the person who did it feel good. It doesn't make the other people who got hurt feel any better to know that person who hurt them, they so happen to be hurt as well. And so that's why it's so important that it's on us to learn how to overcome those things. Because at the end of the day, the only person that's really going to care about your hurt is you. Nobody else is going to care about it. And if you're trying to make other people care about it, the way you go about doing that is by overcoming it. When you overcome it and you share it, people's perspective changes. They're like, man, that's amazing. I can't believe they're so congratulatory. They're so sympathetic and empathetic. To whereas if you don't overcome it and you're just trying to tell all the time why you are the way you are, it's like a turnoff to people. Like they care, but in the opposite direction. They care in a sense of they'll start to say, yeah, but and their yeah, but is yeah, but I know a lot of other people who had the same thing and they didn't do those.
Right.
So it's like you're the only one that thinks that that's a justification to do bad things, or you're the only one that thinks that that's a justification to kind of sit in your misery and just hate life and blame everybody. And that's why you find other people who agree, because the majority of people they don't want any part of that, because we've all been victims. Everybody, to varying degrees, we've all been a victim. And so it's so important to overcome that victimhood mentality, because it literally gets you nowhere, man. It really doesn't. Anyways,
Right.
you got any final thoughts you want to put on this before we start getting ready for this hurricane?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like, look, we're in a time right now where it's easy to find something about you that that people judge, or that people may not totally appreciate, and it's kind of in right now to be different. But here's what as a counselor, I can't help but think you're all different. You're all very different, yet you're all exactly the same. Seriously, for a person that has counseled people for 31 years, there's a lot of differences in you guys. There's enough differences in you guys to help you not compare yourself to others, but there's enough similarities into all of us that allow me to help you heal in a very similar fashion as someone else. And so we're there's very little small differences between us. And so, like, when you go to, have you ever been to Washington, D.C. and the Museum of National Art History or something like that? You ever go there? DC?
I think so.
All
I
right, so
think
they
so.
have the Museum of Natural Arts, and then they have these huge things, right? And there's one thing that has like this the deer or whatever. It's some like genetic difference between humans and like the prehistoric human, right? And all that stuff.
Okay.
And it's something like a 0.005th DNA difference, like to a deer. Something really ridiculous to a human. I'm like, what? Where'd that come from? Because when I think human, I think, all right, supposedly we came from like amoebas and fish and monkeys and all this stuff. But then when they start
Tardigrade.
doing, yeah, and they start doing it like, yeah, there you go, the tardigrade. And then when they start looking like a deer has this much of a difference to a human, I'm like, that's what? How is that possible? But it's that kind of stuff, man. It's that kind of stuff that really makes you think, um, and puts it in perspective. And when you think about how insignificant most of us really are to the greater good of mankind, how insignificant most of us really are to the greater good of mankind. You look, dude, I'm no Martin Luther King Jr. I'm no Elon Musk. These people have done something that would live on forever. You have to be in awe of some of that when there's so many humans that have existed in time that have been forgotten. Hell, man, even our own DNA, we are having to get apps to find out who our ancestors are because that's how they were forgotten, and they're in our own family, and they were forgotten. I can't go past my great great grandparents. I don't know about you, but I mean, how far can you go in your genetic tree out of memory? No, you need an app to
Yeah.
tell you, oh, that's that relative. Oh, that's that relative. Without that, and they were forgotten. So trust me, as memorable as most of us are, most of us will be long forgotten. So it's that important to you now, but there's things that you can do to really help move this whole human experience along, and that's just be a little bit better person to yourself. Therefore, it'll make you better to other people, and then maybe um, if you're not the Martin Luther King Jr. or you're not the Elon Musk, that person may cross your path, and you helped inspire that person just a little bit more. You helped be that help that person continue along their path to greatness. So if it's not you, it might be a person you ran into because somebody ran into them. And there's always people that are disrupting someone else's future. David Siegel said it best when he says that this epidemic, this fentanyl pandemic that's happening, we're missing out on so much music and so much art and so much expression because so many young people are dying today from fentanyl overdoses that we'll never listen to the music they could have created. We'll never watch the movies they could have made. We'll never see their artistic expression that would have given us so much entertainment and joy. And man, there's so much truth to that. Well, I want to see that in each and every one of you, because if you're close enough to me that you're hearing my voice right now or seeing me right now, then you're close enough to me that I can be inspired and in awe, or I can be in some sort of enjoyment for something you're doing. And I want to enjoy that. I want you to be a better part of my life, not just some other person that's just making life more frustrating. And that's it. Enjoy the hurricane. And by the way, I'm kind of like laughing at when you were saying the fathers that you watched on TV, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, well, these are the fathers that I embraced on TV: Archie Bunker, Fred Sanford, George Jefferson. Those are my three
Sure.
fathers that I looked up to when I was a kid. There's a common denominator in
Well,
those three
I
guys.
saw them as well. I mean, and that's where I got my
Yeah, yeah,
sarcasm and stuff
yeah.
from for sure.
Those were my dads, and then the stuff that was before my generation, but was still on TV every day. So I watched it. Was the Brady Bunch? You
I
had the
saw
Brady
that as
Bunch
well.
and Leave It to Beaver. Those were the
Yep.
constants, right? But that was not. I was like, my dad's too nice and too good. See, that's my dad. My dad is a Leave It to Beaver dad. My dad is a Wally Cleaver kind of good man. He's just a good man. You know what I mean? But I liked I'd always tell my dad, look, Dad, see, that's how American dads really are. Look, Fred Sanford, George Jefferson, Archie Bunker. Dad, that's the way you should be. Every time Mom's thirsty, you run and go get her something to drink or something. You shouldn't do that. That's not what Archie Bunker does. She goes and gets him something to drink, Dad, not the other way around. And oh my God, I was so wrong. And my dad used to just look at me and say, you're such an idiot. So I'm the opposite. I had a great role model as a father. Luckily, my kids have been able to embrace my father and know him as their abuelo. And that's what I hope to be. I hope to be as good of a man as my dad is. And thank you, my mom and dad, for giving me and my brother and me the best life they can give me, regardless of the things that do happen to individuals. At least I can't blame them for anything that's ever happened to me. Thank you.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, I saw the other ones as well, and I watched them and I liked them and I thought they were funny. But the other ones were, at least to me, exposure. Like I knew that they existed, kind of a thing. Like I needed to see that to know that it is out there.
Right.
And they definitely planted seeds. But no, I laughed at the Jeffersons and I laughed. I mean, I thought the other ones were hilarious.
I was already grown by the time you mentioned yours, though. I was already grown by the time
Right.
the Cosby's was out. It was done. It was over.
Sure.
Childhood is done.
Anyways, first off, thank you everybody for tuning in. Once again, if you're local, I hope you are taking the necessary precautions for your area for the hurricane. It is coming, and depending on where you're at, it is very serious. And I know the cool thing is to tell everybody how you don't care and everything else. And I think for many people that's fine, but there's many people that's not fine. Like you really should take it serious, depending on where you're at. You know, if you're on the coast, if you're over there by the Tampa or South, you really should be taking precautions. Um, so I hope everybody who is connected to somebody down there who are listening to this, I hope everything is fine, and I'll see you on the other side of it. Also, make sure to follow us on social media outlets so you can see what we're doing. You can watch us on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, or Twitch Live under Dope and Dharma. And then whatever your major podcasting platform is, you can download all of our newest episodes there. I think our next one, hopefully, depending on power, will be on Friday, where we'll do either We the Middle or the morning after, or some sort of combination thereof, with We the Middle being our political show and the morning after being our sports show. Then, of course, on Monday evenings, we have the Couch Live. And then on Tuesdays is this hour, the Dharma Time. So, yeah, I'm not going to reiterate everything that we've said. The main thing is just there is a difference between victim and victimhood. Victim is something we really just can't control. Victimhood is something we can control. It's our job to heal. It's not society's job to accommodate. And I think we've said that before in the sense of making our buttons smaller. But part of making that button smaller is dealing with your stuff. So often we'll notice that people in our lives, especially in relationships, like our stuff will trigger our partner's stuff. And then their stuff will trigger our stuff. And we're just walking around just triggered by everything that's happened in our life that we haven't dealt with. And the only surefire way to prevent that is heal. You know, acknowledge what you've been through, acknowledge how it impacted you, and acknowledge how you can move forward without having that lead the way. And the onus is on you. Like you're the only person that can overcome that. And you can do that a multitude of ways. There are some people out there who are in a position where they can kind of do it on their own. You know, they can find a spiritual, they can find a religion, they can find books. Other people, not so much. Maybe they need to go to therapy. Maybe they need to find somebody who, I mean, the only way you'll know is if whatever you're doing is not working, then obviously you need to find a different way. And what I mean by not working is if you find yourself constantly saying this to everybody around you, if you find yourself constantly in drama, if you find yourself constantly just, you know, throwing your hands in the air and saying, this sucks, this isn't working, you're the one that's not working for, right? Like that's not the world. That's not how it operates. That's not how life is supposed to look, is to constantly go from one problem to the next, throwing your hands in the air. So if that's happening to you, you need to change your mentality. You need to change your approach. You need to heal from some stuff. Um, don't constantly blame the world. Don't constantly think it's other people who need to adjust to your issues or your buttons. You got to look inward. You got to deal. You got to have closure on whatever it is that happened to you. The okay practice, I typically use that, you know, when somebody's saying something I don't agree with or whatever, just okay, you know, but it also works internally too. If you're going to say to somebody, hey, I've been through this, I've been through this, what's your response if the other person just simply says, okay? Because then it's like, now what? Fine, you're right, 100%. I agree. Those things happen. Okay. And then if you have nothing to say after that, then that tells me you need to work on some stuff, right? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We've all been through some things, varying degrees of it. We have to be able to pick ourselves up and move on. We have to be able to accept that which has happened to us and find a way of pushing through and contributing somehow to either our lives or other people's lives. So anyways, that's all I got. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. I'm gonna go. I don't know. I don't know what I need to do for this hurricane, but I'll make last minute preps. But I think the last one I saw was at 11, and it's making a more of a turn. So if you're in Central Florida area, I'm talking to you. You might want to relook at the path because it's pulling a Charlie. For those of you who don't remember, Charlie's probably one of the worst ones we had, aside from Andrew, of course. But it went up the left and kind of turned right, and we were all unsuspecting when it happened. So don't let that be you. Pay attention to the path, and whatever preparations you have. So anyways, thanks all. And now that you know better, do better. Peace.